I'm really interested in what I call the flash novel, which is a very much shorter novel, more elliptical, more about a series of impressions or images. So to give you an idea of it, Marguerite Duras, The Lover, or more recently, Jenny Offel's Department of Speculation. So yeah, more like a narrative built on snapshots or impressions. And so yeah.
Have you read Peter Orner's Last Car Over the Sagamore Bridge?
I haven't. Did you say Peter Orner?
Peter Orner. Like, I think that, I mean, just hearing you speak about it, it would fit into that. It's kind of a collection of short vignettes that add up to a novel without it being really a novel. I can't
Cool.
describe it as that, but it's very cool. I really enjoyed that book.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, because I'm always looking for more examples of novels that fit into this aesthetic. I think it's a really emerging aesthetic, like I would consider Ocean Vuong's, I forget his title, but In Life We're Briefly Gorgeous, something like that. But yeah, I know Peter Orner writes a lot of interesting flash fiction. So yeah, I'll add that to my list. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then you also describe yourself on your website as a whole bunch of things outside, it would seem, of writing: tap dancer, alchemist, contortionist, numbskull, and preacher. And I just want to know what those words meant to you. Like, how are you those things?
All of those words are about being a writer. You have to be a contortionist, twist your body in different shapes, twist your thoughts in different shapes, twist your imagination in different shapes. I don't know. That was mainly, those descriptions were written as a joke. But I do think that within every writer, there's a hidden preacher. I think there's being a numbskull is more about what did Jerry Seinfeld said? He said that the best way to approach anything is to not know anything, to just jump in and be bold. And I think that's what I mean by being a numbskull, is not being overly arrogant or precious or attached to your importance. Sometimes it's good to play the part of a fool or a beginner. So I think it's always important for us to remember who we were at the beginning and to not take ourselves too seriously. And the tap dancer, I mean, how can you not like tap dancing? It's like I think it's I've never taken a tap dancing lesson. It's on my list of things to do, but I love telling people I'm a tap dancer and then trying to prove it and faking it, and it's amazing. I suppose the people know tap dance would call me on it, but it's a pretty good exercise. It's pretty fun. I think it's a lost art. I think it needs to be rediscovered.
And the other thing that that I was talking to my writers about was your pep talks for writers, your book for writers guide. So it seems to me that works in with your work for NaNoWriMo. I think that you characterize that as helping to spread the glories of creativity. And seriously, at this time, it seems that many of us don't feel very creative, that there's a bit of, depression and malaise going on. And so what would be your pep talk for this moment?
That is a really good question, because I actually think this might be the hardest time in my life to write. And I've heard that from a lot of other writers. I mean, it's just a very weird world right now. And it's obviously a very disturbing world. And I was telling somebody today, I feel like there needs to be a new neuroscientific word or label for this state, because on one hand, we're all locked down and at home and possibly isolated. And on the other hand, there's this great turmoil going on in the world. And it's a very discordant mental state. It's a very contradictory mental state. And it's certainly easy to get very depressed and despairing. Even when there are hopeful things in the news, I tend to focus on the more negative things in the news. But that said, it's been interesting to me because we've had more participation than ever in NaNoWriMo. Partly that's because people are at home, but I think that there's more urgency and need for people to put their voices into the world. And so I think and I view writing, I mean, it's so many things. I mean, it is expressing yourself. It is putting your unique story into the world. It's also a wonderful critical thinking tool. It's a wonderful therapeutic tool. It's a wonderful way to connect to other people, whether it's sharing your stories or writing about other people and being able to develop empathy for them or seeing the world through their eyes. And so there's just so many benefits to writing. And I think if we can kind of get over world events and return to our writing, I think it's also a way to center yourself. I personally notice that when I don't write, the days I don't write, I'm just generally a little bit crankier. And if I don't write, you know, that crankiness builds up over time. And I think part of it is that I'm just feeling a little less centered, and a little less connected with myself. And so I think, yeah, I think, you know, we all have different reasons we write and different needs. But I think in times like this, if we let it go, it's probably not a good thing. I think writing will nourish you and re-energize you, and hopefully re-energize you to do the other good work of activism in the world that we really need today.
Well, that's
So
something else that I was going to ask is that I think that some people might feel a little bit of survivor's guilt, you know, at this time, and feel like writing is such a privilege for us in our privileged, privileged lives. You know, I need to sit back and give myself half an hour to write instead of like throwing ourselves at the world's problems. But how it, you know, I think that you have to a large extent answered that you feel like it helps you actually recharge so that you can go out and do more good, right?
yeah, I think so. But you know, it's very interesting because, like, just as you were saying that, you know, the things that I'm mentioning on social media, I mean, it's hard to, like you say, it's a privileged state, and it's hard for me to be sort of preaching about the benefits of creativity in a time like this. You know, like it's hard to me to think about putting that message, or it's harder and more challenging than it normally is, even though I do just what I said. I absolutely believe it. um, but I also know that people, I mean, these times, it just depends on who you are and what you think these times demand of you, and recognizing that. And I think everybody, the main thing is not to be silent. um, but there are a lot of different ways to not be silent, and so I think you have to find that way that is meaningful and that works for you to put your voice in the world. And that can be by donating, by marching, by writing, by all of the above. I think the main thing, though, is to take action.
Well, on that very inspirational note, I'm going to invite everybody to turn their cameras back on so that they can actually ask you the questions that they've got for you.
Cool, great questions, by the way, Sharon.
Oh, thank you.
I've never been asked the one about the numbskull preacher tap dancer, so you got me on that one.
Okay, so here's everybody coming back.
Cool. Hi, everyone.
Dana, why don't you lead us off? You had a question.
Yeah, it's kind of, so first of all, thank you. It's great to hear your remarks, and refreshing to be thinking about writing despite all the other stuff that's made, because of all the other stuff that's going around us. And like everyone, probably I struggle to make the time and make the psychological space to do it. And so I'm really interested in NaNoWriMo, even though I've never actually done it. And I was wondering, and apologies if this is known or obvious to everyone else, but is there any reason why November is particularly appropriate or good, or is it arbitrary? Is there? I'm just wondering what the origin of November is behind this, and whether there's any rationale behind it.
Yeah. Let me think. Let me see. So the rationale behind it, our line is if you can do it in November, you can do it anytime. So a lot of people suggest January because that's the first month of the year when people are making resolutions, and January has an extra day. And I suppose that makes sense. I think it is arbitrary, though. It was decided before I joined, and I've never gotten a clear answer on that. It's in the hidden secret in the crypts of NaNoWriMo.
In some ways, there's nothing wrong with it. Maybe it's even better that it's arbitrary, but I wanted to know if it was. Thank you.
My guess is it's somewhat arbitrary. The first NaNoWriMo actually took place in July. And I think they decided not to do it in the July after that, just because a lot of people would be on vacation. And there really is no perfect month for it, though. A lot of people complain about November because of Thanksgiving, and they have to do work or travel, or cook the meal or travel for Thanksgiving. But then a lot of people, that's when they catch up on their word count, like me. It's great to have a 4-day weekend to just write. So yeah, sorry I can't answer that better.
No, you did answer. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Debbie, you had a question.
I had been thinking earlier today, Grant, I'm starting a novel. I mean, I've been working on it for 6 months and it's just really not going anywhere. So I was going to ask advice for folks who struggle kind of with the flow of plot. And you already addressed maybe just take more time doing just free writing and hitting deadlines. But does anything else come to mind?
So you're struggling with plot in particular.
Yeah, well, I'm rewriting the first chapters. That's a problem, which you also addressed. But then I keep going back to those first chapters because my plot isn't quite moving forward, so I'm not getting the inspiration to move forward.
Have you, like one thing that we talk a lot about in preparation for NaNoWriMo in September and October is whether people are planners or pantsers or in between plantsers.
I think I'm a planter.
You're a planter? Okay, I am too. I identify as a planter. So but every year I kind of lean a little bit more into being a planner. But I'm not I don't like to outline an entire novel because it does kind of take the fun of writing it away from me. But that said, I think the best planners, and the reason it takes the fun out of it is because I think writing a novel is about pursuit, and you're pursuing questions and answers, and you're pursuing a mystery of a story. But the best planners are also pursuing the mystery of a story. They're allowing themselves to go off of their outline and have a sense of discovery. So I think it's really in the end about finding what works for you. And so maybe since you're having a hard time with this in terms of like the plot level, maybe it's worth, well, one, either just saying plot doesn't matter in this first draft, just write it, see where you end up, see what surprises open themselves up to you. That's one way. Be more of a pantser, or be more of a planner. Take a weekend. You can do both, actually. A lot of people outline their novels after writing them, so they'll basically pants their novel and then put structure around it more in revision. So I think there's just a lot of different ways to go about it. I'll make one more tangible recommendation, is that there's this book, Save the Cat for Novelists. And if you're familiar with Save the Cat, it's a famous book for screenwriters, and it helps with structure, I think, in particular. And so this book, written by Jessica Brody, she's kind of a friend of NaNoWriMo. We've done webcasts before. I really like it as a brainstorming tool. So I actually sit down, and I don't read the whole book. I think I read like the first third of it or so. And it walks you through the kind of basic 3-act plot structure for like a screenplay. And it's just a brainstorming tool to me, but I'm a bad plotter. And so it just helps me kind of, have some structure in mind and kind of outline it in my sketchy fashion. So you might try that as well.
Great suggestion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Well, keep believing in it though. Like if you have passion to write it all, find a way to do it. Don't just give up on it. And maybe you might be doubting your plot too much too. I think a lot of writers can kind of self-sabotage themselves by just telling themselves that it's not good.